got into the conversation, and obviously I run my family business,
Right.
and he had been watching some of my shows, and he's like, man, how do you do it? Like, how do you like do your
Toe the
business
line, yeah.
and do this and say all the stuff you say on here?
Right.
And I was like, well, I just personally, I got to the point in life. It was just like the tattoos,
Yep.
where I just said, you know what? I'd started up
I
here.
am who I am. Yeah.
And quite honestly, man, what I started getting was like 80-year-old women, like our customers, would be like, man, Jason, I love your tattoos. My son or my grandson has some just like it, and I think they're awesome. And it was the most startling thing to me that I would get a lot of that. But
tattoos are kind of a funny deal because like they've become acceptable.
yeah,
But even like our parents' generation is still kind of like, whoa, like don't express yourself that way. But I think to the younger crowd, to like millennials and on, it's like tattoos are going to be they're in. You know what I mean? Like they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great expressive way of artwork.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a really cool way to express yourself.
Well, like I was talking with Shane yesterday, I mean, a lot of his, he actually, he was a bit of a hoodlum when he was younger, and he spent some time in prison.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of his tattoos are from prison.
Interesting.
And which is ironic. He was in trouble when he was younger.
Sure.
Ended up, going off into the service, serving our country and everything. Got in trouble, stayed in trouble kind of when he came back. That's actually when he went to prison, as after he did his service. But he ended up having tattoos from everywhere. So, in the real estate world, it's like pretty image focused.
Yeah, I think it can be, and I think your clientele kind of reflects the image you create for yourself. In a sense, it's where you live and who you're typically dealing with, or an area of town or whatever. And for the most part, in Houston, it's people who live in the Heights look like people who live in the Heights. People who live in River Oaks look like people who live in River Oaks. And so I think it kind of morphs that way, intentionally or unintentionally. I wouldn't say there probably aren't many tattooed real estate agents inside the city.
Yeah.
They probably are, but they're covered up for the most part, Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, there's an image you need to create there and keep in terms of branding and whatever else. And it's not that a brokerage won't hire you because you have tattoos or piercings or whatever, but for the most part, people look the same.
Yeah. Well, dude, as like one of the top real estate agents in the city of Houston, man, you probably interact with some, like, especially where you're at.
Yeah.
Like, you interact with some pretty, like, interesting people,
For
like,
sure.
of all, like all walks of life.
Yeah. And I've found myself feeling like the dumb one in the room many times, because a lot of my clients are engineers and petroleum engineers, chemical engineers, structural and all. I mean, it's just like, I feel like an idiot compared to most of them. And I spend a lot of my time with clients trying to pick their brain on, like, man, like, what are you into, and what does your family do, and that kind of thing, because there's some interesting people.
Yeah.
And most of them aren't from Houston. Most of them come from outside the state or outside the city and end up here because of our industries. And so, yeah, there's some fun stories.
Do you find yourself, like right now in a place like Houston? I mean, the markets are just crazy.
Yep.
Do you find yourself representing more buyers or sellers at this point?
Yeah, starting out, I've been doing real estate for, I guess, a little bit more than 5 years now. So starting out, you're almost always representing buyers to start, unless you just know of people who happen to be selling their houses. So each year has come with more listings in terms of selling people's houses, but for the most part, I'm representing buyers, and I actually prefer it that way, because it gives me a chance. Like my business is very relational driven. Like, I want to get to know my clients. I want to have a relationship with my clients. I want to be friends with my clients outside of any sort of real estate transaction. So you get to know that more on the buyer side when you're driving around looking at a bunch of houses and asking kind of pointed questions, strategic questions, and what's important to your family. What are the things that you want in a house because it supports your family, or because your lifestyle is this and you want to be near the bars, the restaurants, or your church, or whatever it is. So I prefer to help the buyer side many agents don't, because it's more work. It's more time, it's more effort, it's more conversations, but that's the way I want my business to be.
Do you get to, I think you probably, I would say, like on the buyer side, you probably get to be a lot more forthright with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, especially because I have an idea of a construction mindedness, and so when I look at a house, I'm looking at like, what are going to be the maintenance issues of this house? Is it right at that 20-year mark where your HVAC system is going to start to fall apart? If your water heater hasn't fallen apart yet, it probably is. Your roof's getting towards the end of its lifespan, those types of things. And so I feel like I can be like, you see this is going to be an issue for you, you know, and a lot of buyers don't see that stuff, you know, right off the bat. But but you're right. I mean, I want to be honest with them, because I don't want them to buy a house and they turn around and be like, why did you let me buy this house? You know, this was a horrible idea. I don't want to have that backlash, or, you know, just that reputation of just being like, buy, whatever you want to buy, whatever you see, you buy it. I'd rather than buy the right house for them.
Yeah.
So,
well, because I figure as a seller, you're kind of like, it's not like stuffing the shit back in the goose, so to speak, but you are. We talked about this.
Yeah.
I sent you a text with these buzzwords, and those, honestly, when I was looking at that, I was like, this seems like a seller. You know, beautiful on the inside.
Yeah. I mean, looking up synonyms of certain words, like synonym for beautiful, you know, there are like 20 things that come by. Like, all right, how many of those can I fit into this like description of a house?
Yeah.
And I find myself on thesaurus.com all the time trying to like think of, okay, what's a different word I can use to describe? Like, one of the ones that made me laugh that you sent was, I think it said cozy, and it said like, tiny house or something. It was like, yeah, this house was really tiny. Or something like that. I was like, that's exactly right. I mean, it's like you use these words to make it seem glamorous just to get people in the door.
Yeah.
But the reality is, like, there's issues with every house, you know, even new construction. So, it's kind of pointing people in the right direction. But with sellers, you don't want to be deceptive, because a buyer can, I mean, there's tons of legal ramifications for being an agent or being deceiving in someone purchasing a house. But you're trying to present your house in the best light. And so, how do you do that? You know, you describe it in a certain way, or you take photos in a certain angle, and, you know, super wide angle lenses for these tiny backyards in Houston, you know, and makes them look like that you can, you know, run circles around the yard. So, you're just trying to present everything in the best light, because the best way to sell a house is to get as many eyes on it as possible. Yeah. And so that's the goal.
When, like where you're at, specifically where you're at, you're seeing a lot of kind of like, I guess the word is gentrification. Yeah. Are you seeing a lot of people come in, buy these older homes, rip them down, and build, you know, $3 to $5 million, like really just great looking houses?
It depends on the neighborhood, and the reason I say that is because the dirt value in each neighborhood is different. So in my neighborhood, it's still relatively inexpensive to buy dirt. I mean, it's expensive, but it's still inexpensive compared to other neighborhoods. If you look in the Heights, a typical 5,000 square foot lot is just the dirt alone is probably worth $500,000, which is nuts, right? Yeah. And so in order for a builder to make their 20% margin, which is always their goal, more than 20% or more, in order for them to make their 20% margin, they've got to build houses of 1.5 plus. And so in some neighborhoods, that's not possible. So my neighborhood, you can probably get a decent lot for between 350, 400, a little bit larger, but you still have to build, you know, 1.4, 1.3, 1.4, 1.6. And some of those are happening in certain neighborhoods, but then there's neighborhoods where you look at Memorials under Memorial High School, some of those lots are worth $1 million, and that's just the dirt. And so you've got to build massive houses and massive, high-end houses in order to be able to make your margin as a builder. So in some neighborhoods, yes. In some neighborhoods, no, because the margin's not there. So people will build them homes for themselves, but you don't see as many builders coming in, tearing down houses, building up a spec home, and then selling it off. Yeah. It's usually custom clients that they're building houses for in certain neighborhoods. It
is unbelievable. I mean, you grew up out here, and obviously seeing the growth and the change out here. Yeah. Now you live inside the loop pretty much. Right. But you come out here and you can still pick up, you know, an entire acre out here for, you know, $35,000, $40,000. Yeah. I mean, right up the road here. Yep. I was actually my best friend who may at some point show up in here. Sure. I think, he said, he actually just texted me, said he's on his way. I actually told him I'd like him to come by and meet you. Yeah. And he lives He lives Country Club Green, lives
Okay,
right
yeah,
across the street,
yeah,
mile
yeah.
away. So
Right.
you knew that. I told you that's one of the main reasons I
Sure.
picked this house.
Yeah.
Anyway, he has he's in construction,
Okay.
and a buddy of his happens to apparently live in this neighborhood,
Okay.
whose father owns a large drywall company.
Interesting.
Right up the road here, they own not like 10 acres, several hundred acres.
Whoa.
Like right down here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, obviously that's huge.
Sure.
Because even at, it got 100 acres at $20,000 an acre.
Exactly.
You're doing pretty good.
Yep.
It's got several hundred acres right over here.
Right.
But you can get them. You can buy the acreage out here. They got 10-acre lot right around the corner here for like $450,000.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
Uh-huh.
The prices you're talking about, and what is it that people are looking for when they want that? Are they looking for the proximity? They don't want the drive. What is it you find people are really looking for when they buy a $500,000 piece of dirt?
Right. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with proximity to work and what they do socially. So in the city, people are like, no, I work downtown. I want to live close to downtown because I don't want to deal with the traffic and whatever else. A lot of my clients who buy out here are wanting land, especially since COVID. They're going, I don't want to be cooped up in my tiny apartment downtown. I'd rather live out in the burbs a little bit where I can have more land, more yard, that kind of thing, bigger house for the same price, pool, whatever. And so they come out here, but some of those folks work out in the woodlands, or they're work from home for the most part. I can do what I want to do 4 days a week at home, and then I have to go into the office 1 day a week. I'll be willing to sacrifice an hour commute to do that. And so it just when you spend $500,000 on dirt, it has to do with basic proximity. It could be schools.
Yeah.
There aren't that many amazing schools in Houston and HISD. So some people are like, no, I want to be at this specific school, so I'm willing to spend more for the house and the dirt to be zoned to that school. So that's some of it as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I've got one of my really close friends, guy I grew up with skating.
Yeah.
He actually just listed his condo in downtown.
Okay. Yeah.
I gave him your number, but he had a friend he went to school with.
What a jerk.
Yeah, I know. Selfish. But yeah, so
he's
actually looking. He's moving over to the Memorial because he wants to be zoned.
Yeah.
Him and his ex-wife, their kid they eventually, I guess, zoned to Memorial High School.
Yep.
So they're trying to get close to all like the elementary schools and stuff that are over there.
Yeah.
He's literally downtown. He's
Right.
owned this place for over a decade.
Sure.
And now he's like, yeah, I'm going to go buy a house, kind of get into the suburbs. I'm like, dude.
That's a suburb right there.
Yeah. I was like, man, because obviously you just growing up in Houston, like you understand that area is expensive. And
Totally.
I'm like, man, you got a really nice condo, but dude,
Yep.
like that's a big thing. So yeah, that's where he's looking to go. And I just couldn't believe it. He was telling me some of the prices.
And it kind of depends on what elementary school you're zoned to, where you are in relation to, are you north of I-10, are you south of I-10? Those are different prices in Memorial. But you can get a $700,000 house in Memorial. But you're going to be north of I-10, like kind of right on the cusp of, zone to Memorial High School versus Northbrook or Spring Woods or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are affordable houses in Memorial, but affordable is relative, right?
Yeah.
And so, but to buy a decently constructed house that's been renovated or it's fairly newer in terms of construction, you can pretty much bank on $1 million. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got another buddy of ours that, he's an attorney. He's an immigration attorney, so it's all federal. So he can literally practice from anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And his clients are, in Minnesota and they're in Florida and stuff. And he's Indian.
Okay.
And got a huge Indian clientele.
Yeah.
And so we were talking, he lives in San Antonio right now.
Okay.
His wife is, she's finishing up her residency.
Okay.
Some like neurosurgeon, crazy stuff.
Sure. She's pretty smart.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I was having a conversation with them over New Year's, and they're moving here because his brother lives right across the street.
Yeah.
So they're moving here, and they were talking about buying a house, and they want to go in the TC Jester I-10 area.
Yeah.
And they're like, and again, growing up out here, I just don't think of it like this. But he's like, yeah, we're something that's like relatively cheap. He's like, yeah, maybe 900,000.
Tell him to give me a call.
And I'm like, well, I did. I gave him your information. Sent your contact over to him because I was like, holy crap, like that's what you think of. He's like, but I want to be in that area.
He wants to be in the Heights.
Yeah.
That's where everybody wants to be.
Yeah. And I was like, I mean, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I get it completely. A lot of people, we have a lot of friends that have moved from this area to kind of go into more urban areas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about his wife, though. She's just finishing her residency. She's likely, if she's in Houston has the largest med center in the world.
Mm-hmm.
If she's going to end up working in the med center, which she probably will, because that's where there's campuses in the Woodlands and things like that are big, but she probably doesn't want to have an hour commute after working a 12-hour day. She wants to be relatively close to home. And so it makes sense. I mean, like the thing I love about Houston is well, two things. A lot of people don't know this, but it's past New York City as the most diverse city in the country.
Yes.
I think part of that is because we're so widespread. I mean, it's not Houston proper is not that big, but when you start to include, Galveston, as part of Houston, Sugar Land, Katy, the Woodlands, Tomball, this area, Magnolia even, tons of diversity because there's so much space for people to live, and there's still a lot of land that's undeveloped. You just mentioned your friend that has a couple hundred acres down the road. I mean, there's a lot of land like that that's still undeveloped. So that's one of my favorite things about Houston is the diversity. The second thing is it's not a one industry town. I mean, you look at Houston and you think oil and gas. You look at Dallas, you think oil and gas. But with the med center being such a massive piece of our population, a lot of people are coming in for different reasons, not just oil and gas, even though that is probably the biggest industry in Houston. So we're insulated from a lot of that up and down in terms of the economic flow. Because we're not just stuck on oil and gas. We have other things that are going on in Houston as well.
Yeah, we did a kind of funny, made me think about this, is after Hurricane Ike, we did a job for, it was called the Houston Pilots.
Okay.
Houston Pilots are, they're the company that they go out into the Gulf.
Okay.
They drive these little pilot boats.
Huh.
So you have an oil tanker that's coming across the Atlantic from like Nigeria or something like that, and it comes into the Gulf. That's obviously driven by a captain of that ship.
Sure.
But once they come into the port, they're not allowed to steer it into the port.
Yeah,
they can, but by regulation, they're supposed to be a pilot.
Different sizes and things like that. Yeah,
absolutely, it's different when it's 2 miles deep versus maybe 150 feet deep, and you've got a boat that's got 140 40 feet underwater.
That's right.
So they send out these pilots, and this is it's an organization. It was very funny. I found out about. It's very nepotistic. It's like it's all brothers and cousins and so on and so forth. But anyway, they had a lot of damage. Their corporate office had a lot of damage after Hurricane Ike came through in 2008, and the insurance adjuster came through. And he was like, well, I'm not paying for this, and I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to pay this.
Yeah.
And so I grabbed him and I went into their operations. We were able to keep their operations room up and running with all their computers and screens, watching what's happening out there.
Yeah.
And I brought him in the operations room and I said, where are you from? And I did this like right in front of the like president and all these other people. I said, where are you from? Mm-hmm. He says, well, I'm from Orlando. And I said, oh, okay. So your entire population, your entire industry relies on tourism.
Yeah.
I said, so when something bad happens in Florida, whatever, you don't have a lot of people flying down there going to Disney, and your entire, like everything in Florida pretty much goes down.
Sure.
So I said, do you know why the world runs? Why the country runs the way it does? He's like, man, he thought I was being an asshole.
Right. He's like, just tell me.
Yeah. I said, you see those screens right there? Those little dots out there represent oil tankers. Yeah. Each oil tanker is carrying roughly $5 billion in raw crude. I said, when it comes into this port, I said, it is refined and put out and turned into $20 billion in industry revenue for all types of infrastructure and industry around the world. It starts here in Houston.
Right.
And I said, you see all the ships out there?
Yeah.
I said, there's like 50 little dots out there. I said, those ships can't come in because you won't put this company back in business so they can go out there and drive those ships. And I said, I can promise you that if you don't take care of this, you're going to have somebody from the federal government down here really fast telling you to write that damn check.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I was kind of freestyling it at the time, just because I was kind of amped up, but then I sat back and I sat down and I thought about it, and I was like, well, I mean, I knew the statistics,
right?
But I was like, you know what? Like, yeah, I would say if you look at economy, our economy is probably 40% oil and gas.
Yeah,
it's pretty high
for sure.
But then my buddy Fred.
What's going on?
This is Mark.
How's it going?
How's it going, Mark?
Good.
So, but I started going back and realizing like we actually have a lot of other stuff here in Houston.
Yeah.
Like if you go to the west side of town,
Mm-hmm.
like BMC Software,
Mm-hmm.
Audubon,
Right.
that's out there. Like there's a lot of other stuff that Houston is really just.
Well, and comparatively to other states, we have pretty cheap real estate. I mean, now
Yeah.
property taxes are huge,
Ridiculous.
but we don't have state income tax.
Yep, right.
And it goes, and a lot of that property tax is going to schools and whatever else. But, I mean, compare California. There's a lot of California residents and businesses moving to Texas, not just Houston, but a lot of Austin, especially the tech industry. But it's because our real estate is affordable.
Yeah.
I had a client just recently looking for a place actually in this area, looking for kind of some horse property because they live in California currently and have horses, and they couldn't believe how inexpensive 10 acres and a house was in Northwest Houston. And I'm going, if you think this isn't expensive, I can't imagine what it is in California to have the same thing. You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking $million properties, but they're going, that's cheap compared to what we have to do in California and some of these other states.
Yeah.
So,
They have lower. I saw a video the other day. There was a guy comparing two properties, same exact price, essentially in California and Texas, at the same exact interest rate. Ironically,
right.
solely based on the house itself. Same exact, not same size,
Right.
same price value.
Okay.
Of course, here you can get a 5,000 square foot house. Relatively inexpensive. We'll call it $750,000.
Yeah.
$750,000 there is going to buy you like 2,000
That's
square
exactly
feet.
right. Yeah.
But if you just look at the value, dollar value of the house, you actually pay less per month in California because their property taxes are about 1% lower, which I was very surprised of. But obviously you're getting much more bang for your buck here.
Right.
But if you're at the $750,000 price range, that's where you're looking to be, and you want to be in California. Comparatively, it was ironic that the price was cheaper.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how much house you want. You know, if you're
I'd
okay
much
with
rather
2,000 square feet versus 5,000. To me, 5,000 too big for me.
Yeah.
But you know, if someone is used to a large house and wants to come into a large house, you can get a lot more for that. So, and that's the whole debate about behind price per square foot. I don't think price per square foot is a good indicator of value.
Yeah.
And it's a good secondary indicator of value if you're looking at apples to apples. If you're looking at houses that are pretty close to the exact same size lot, same kind of decor inside or finishes, whether it's been updated versus remodeled, and those are different things in real estate. Then you can compare price per square foot. But I don't think just going, I am only going to pay $225 a square foot and not a penny more.
Yeah.
You have to think about what you're purchasing. Are you purchasing a 2,000 square foot house or a 3,000 square foot house? Because the more expensive or larger house is going to have a much lower price per square foot.
Yeah.
So anyway, because there are different laws of scale, you just can't look at a 3,000 square foot house versus a 2,000 square foot house.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest indicator. I was talking to actually someone who's an appraiser in Houston. And he was saying price per square foot drives him crazy. He's
does it first initial J?
No.
Oh, okay.
Hey. I don't.
Dave.
No, Aaron.
No. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if we can say people's names in the podcast or not.
We could say their names. We just absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, Aaron Plumley is an appraiser.
Yeah.
And he was I call him every once in a while, just like, hey, as an appraiser, how would you look at this?
Yeah.
And he's like, the whole price per square foot thing, it just drives me up the wall, because you cannot just take that as the first indicator of value. And this is way too much price per square foot. I'm never going to buy that house because the price per square foot. And so look at the whole thing. And to be honest with you, appraisers don't even really look at square footage overall, not even necessarily rooms. So it could be a 3-bedroom versus a 4-bedroom. But if the square footage is the same, they're going to look at them pretty similarly.
Gotcha.
So anyway, it's those types of things are, when you get in it, people, you hear these comments from buyers and sellers, and you're going, man, like we're way off for a second. We need to get zoned back in.
Yeah. Well, so going kind of on that direction, what do you see? Obviously, prices of houses. I mean, you were my agent on my house here.
Yeah.
Stole this place.
Right.
The appreciation of value on this house. I mean, like right across the street over there. Ironically, I don't know if I told you this.
Mm-hmm.
So Fred, the guy across the street, one day Fred's over here.
Okay.
And he's just hanging out. He goes to leave, and the guy across the street stops him. They've known each other since they were like 16.
Small world.
Yeah,
man.
and I've known Fred since we were 10.
Yeah.
So it was just really, really odd. Well, they just put their house on the market. Same exact house. Same exact house. Put a pool in the background and everything, but literally 50% more than what I paid for this. And
you got a heck of a deal on this house.
Yeah. And obviously, prices of housing have just skyrocketed over the last year.
Sure.
In Houston, what do you see the number one indicator as to the reason of why the houses have just gone through the roof? The price of property values just gone so far high.
If I had to put one indicator on it, I'd say work from home situations has really changed people's mentality of how their house looks and what they need in a house. COVID starts March of 2020. Is that right?
Pretty close, yeah.
March of 2020. Offices shut down. There's some oil and gas companies that I work with in downtown that this past week was the first week they told their staff to start coming back to the office.
Mm-hmm.
It's been almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And so a lot of those folks have kind of said they were at the time were either living in small houses, maybe in the suburbs, maybe not. I can work from wherever. I'm just going to go for it and buy, a house because interest rates were going down. We're going down, and are just now starting to come back up. And people are like, if I'm going to be working from home, and if my kids are potentially going to be out of school 10 days at a time, every time someone in their class, tests positive for COVID, I need space.
Yeah.
I need a home office, or I need a 5th bedroom because I have, 2 kids, guest room plus a study or whatever. And I think that was a huge indicator of people being like, no, if I'm going to be at home working, I'm going to buy the house I want to buy, and be there. If I, it's lifestyle. I mean, people are like, if I'm going to have to be stuck in my house, I want to have a nice backyard, or a place where my kids can play, or a pool because I want to relax. And it's hot during the summer here. And so I think that's probably the biggest indicator. I think it helped that interest rates went down pretty significantly, and people realized, man, I can buy a house for pretty cheap right now.
Yeah.
And they still can. It hasn't gone up that much. I was just looking at some numbers today. If you take out property taxes, homeowners insurance, things like that, and you look at $1 million house at a 3% interest rate versus a 4% interest rate, we're not talking about that much money on a monthly basis. We're talking about maybe $500 on a monthly basis just with the interest rate difference. So even though the rates are increasing from a year from now, it's still really reasonable, and actually less than when I bought my house 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So, they're still pretty within balance of what, but I would say that's probably the biggest indicator.
Well, where do you see things going in the next 6 months to a year? What do you think's going to happen?
Yeah, I think it's going to stay hot. So I'd say the easy answer for agents when someone says, how's the market, is inventory's low. And I think that's what people are really plugging. Inventory's low. And inventory is lower than what we've seen in years past, but it's not low. It's just that the market is faster now. And so when we say inventory is low, it's not that there are less homes coming on the market. It's that the homes that are coming on the market are selling faster, which is keeping the inventory down. So it could be, let's just say hypothetically, we're using hypothetical numbers here. The 500 homes were listed in 2020 in the fourth quarter of the year. Okay, there might still be 500 homes listed in 2021 in the fourth quarter of the year, but of those 500 homes, more of them sold faster, and so it makes the inventory, so it's kind of skewed a little bit that way. It makes the inventory look low. So the market's still hot. And I think it will continue to stay hot even as the Fed raises rates. because I don't think rates are going to, they're not going to jump up, a full, 100 basis points or anything like that. I think it's probably going to stay, somewhere in the fours over the rest of this year. And when the good houses come on the market, people are willing to buy them. And that's how Houston's always been. It's never been this industry. The housing market has never tanked with the economy. It's always kind of stayed level. Mm-hmm. If things start to go south with the economy, the Houston housing market doesn't tank with it. It kind of stays steady, and then we'll start to tick back up gradually.
Yeah.
Because it's overall it's a pretty affordable city to live in.
Very much.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we had because interest rates kind of they just kind of skyrocketed in 2008. Mm-hmm. So there was obviously that effect with a lot of people, because there was those fluctuating rates that everybody had. People got a little bit smarter. Everybody's like, oh my God, I can get into this house right now for this price, and I'm buying this, and it's fantastic. And all of a sudden, 12 months, 24, 36, 5 years later, they're a full % higher on their interest rate. And they're like, oh my God, I can't afford this. And then 2008 hits, and then interest rates just skyrocket.
Yeah. Adjustable rates are tough.
Yeah. That was hard. Do you see a lot of institutional coming in right now? I mean, got a buddy of ours, that was literally, got into a bidding war, where a house, 3 houses down from him, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, sold at about, we'll call it 250. Mm-hmm. His house is a little bit smaller and 2-story.
Okay.
Literally was able to sell it for about almost 350. Mm-hmm. And was a bidding war for cash and it ended up coming from a couple different institutional buyers. Mm. What I was starting to see was a lot of institutional coming in, but buying for rental purposes.
When you say institutional, you mean investors?
Yeah, but like Open Door.
Oh yeah. So kind of like
BlackRock, stuff like that.
Yeah, like internet type buyers. I haven't seen as many of those in Houston as I have investors who have just kind of said, hey, I can afford to buy some cheap property in Houston and rent it out because it's going to rent out no problem. And so, we've seen
just some high net worth individuals.
Yeah, I think so. And that's Houston in general. Like we talked about it being a pretty diverse city. It's a very diverse city. There's just a lot of people who have some sort of tie to Houston who's like, I don't mind owning property there. I already have one house, I might as well have 3 and rent them all out. So we see a lot of that, especially in the city. In the city, we see a lot of that. And in areas that flood, I mean, you deal with this, kind of natural disaster type stuff. Mm-hmm. In areas that flood, you immediately see after some sort of natural event that, investors just swoop in and be like, I'll offer you cash to get this thing off your hands because you don't want to have to deal with a flooded house. Like, that would just be terrible.
Yeah.
And so they'll I'll buy it for pennies on the dollar and turn it around. I'll own it for 5 years, rent it out, and then I'll sell it once the market kind of hits its peak again.
Yeah.
And they do that all the time. I think of Meyerland specifically. They do that all the time there. And so anyway, there are a lot of investors who do purchase. Now, the multiple offer stuff, I think people can kind of start to see through that a little bit in the sense that, let's say you have 10 offers on a house, at least 5 of those are going to be local buyers who are like, me and my family want to buy this house and here's why. And so there's a lot of competition in that sense. And there are ways to kind of, make your offer a little bit more appealing to a seller.
Yeah.
Which is kind of some not any shady business. You're just manipulating the contract to kind of make your offer more favorable than someone else's.
Sure.
Because, you're willing to bypass some things and not others. And anyway, so we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of appraisals be waived. Not from a lender's perspective because they have to have the appraisal if you're getting a loan, but from a buyer's perspective, hey, we're willing to pay this for the house. Regardless of what the appraisal says, we're willing to pay the difference in cash if the appraisal comes in low.
Yeah.
That's probably the number one way to win a multiple offer situation would be to waive the appraisal because you have disposable income to be able to say, I'll just put more cash down.
My buddy, that was the exact situation. They kept waiting for appraisal.
That's right.
And they were paying the cash and they won it all. They were selected and they ended up never coming in and doing appraisal. Not even a video appraisal.
Did they have a loan?
No, it was an institutional buyer paying.
Interesting. So if you're paying cash, you don't have to have an appraisal.
Yeah.
So the only reason an appraisal is done is for a lender.
Okay.
A person, like if I'm paying cash, I can personally have an appraisal done.
Yeah.
But it won't have any effect on whether that contract goes through or not.
No statutory requirements.
I'm just wanting to know how much the house is worth from a third party appraiser. So
yeah.
But if there's no appraisal, it's a cash offer. If there's a loan involved, there will be an appraisal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you just recently switched.
Yeah.
Brokerages.
Yeah, I did. Now I was with Beth Wolf Realtors, and now I'm with Martha Turner Sotheby's International. So bigger brand. Yeah, bigger brand, bigger recognition. I think there's a larger ceiling with Sotheby's. I mean, it's a worldwide company. It's in 77 countries right now. The impact, it has a reputation for luxury real estate in Houston, and it feels that way being with the brokerage. I mean, everything they do is incredibly professional, and it just feels that way when you're with those agents.
Berkshire Hathaway Company, correct?
No. So Sotheby's is its own separate thing. So
Okay.
Martha Turner was a local broker.
Yeah, long time.
Yep.
My parents bought their house out here
really?
in 1992 using Martha Turner.
Yeah. So and she's still around. So she has an office there in the same office I'm in. But so she had a brokerage, I think starting in the 80s, I believe is when she started that brokerage. And then I can't remember exactly what year, but Sotheby's bought the whole Martha Turner brand in Houston.
Okay.
And just kind of made it one of their own. I mean, it's huge nationally, but it's also worldwide.
Yeah, I mean, I travel and I see their stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
Like we're leaving on Saturday to go for a bachelor party in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
And in 2019, I went out there for some training, and I was like, man, I love this place. I want to buy a house out here. Half the houses were Sotheby's.
Yeah.
And it's a nice. You typically what you guys are representing is typically like a nicer house. Typically more.
So and that's the other piece too is that I'm learning is there we do have plenty of $3 and $5 million listings in Houston, but if you look at the stats, the majority of what we do is under $1 million. I think the average price of what the business we did in 2021 was like $720,000.
Yeah. Nice.
So it has the luxury feel to it, but doesn't mean we're only listing luxury houses or selling luxury houses to buyers as well. So, but it feels like everything just feels really nice and clean, and everything's well branded. I mean, you know that with owning a business. I mean, everything has to be well branded and that type of deal.
My dad was obsessed about that.
Yeah.
My mom rides my butt because technically she still owns the company, and not technically. I mean, legally she still owns the company and everything. And she rides my butt. And my dad was always a real big stickler about it. But yeah, she rides my butt all the time. There's trash in the back of that truck, Jason. It doesn't look good. The dumpster's full or whatever. She's. Well, I don't know if
it goes back to what we're saying, like first impressions are everything, right?
It's big time.
So when I meet a client for the first time, if I'm not like, if my neck's not shaven or whatever else, it's like, oh, this might look bad to this one client, even though it's like, this is who I am, whatever. I don't have to be clean shaven. It's first impressions are big. Yeah,
it's huge. Yeah. Well, Mark, man, I know you got to cut out of here, man. I know you got some other appointments, so I want to say thank you for coming out, man. I like to end my every show, regardless if I'm doing it with, on a positive note, on some affirmations here.
Okay.
And I need to tell you, you probably don't know this. Some people may talk to you about it. Some people, may express it to you. You were my real estate agent, and though that may not seem like a big deal because you buy and sell properties all the time, I want to let you know how instrumental you were in actually altering my life path, and what it meant to me to be able to buy this house and have you as a part of that. In 2008, I went through a really bad divorce. Gave up my house and everything, all that other stuff, all the other stuff I went through. After that, it destroyed, it affected mentally, obviously, just having to deal with all that nonsense, but it destroyed my credit.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to rebuild everything and get back, and to be able to come in here, and hold a key to my own house. I rented, nice townhouses for years. You know, I rented a 5,000 square foot house in Cypress, Town Lake, for like a year and a half, and I didn't own it.
Right.
And your assistance and all that, not only the restraints and restrictions I put on you for everything, like literally I filled out my pre-approval, got my pre-qual, and literally within 4.5 weeks, we closed on this thing.
Yeah. It was quick.
Done. Like you met me every way, every which way possible to get this done. And so I want to say to you, man, hey, I don't know if I ever expressed it to you, but what you did for me changed the complete trajectory of my life. You know, we bought this in August of 2020.
Yeah.
My father passing away in February, just 4 or 5 months later, February last year, the 19th of February.
Yeah.
Being in here, like, I'll be honest, man, sitting in this house, like, for weeks I couldn't, like, do laundry. I couldn't do anything. But I know if I hadn't been here, if I hadn't had this rock, this stability that you helped provide, man, I'd probably be in a lot worse place, like mentally and everything. And I was thinking about this the other day. You don't know enough of what you do for people because you just don't know every moment, especially after you finish the deal. We've stayed in contact. You see Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you don't know really what's going through everybody's minds and things like that and the changes in their life after you're kind of done the deal.
Yeah.
But I need to tell you, man, how big of an impact your efforts, everything you did for me has changed me and made, and just it's those little pieces that were put into place, man, that you helped put together for me that really helped hold my life together when my father passed away and after a lot of this other stuff, man. So literally from the deepest part of my soul, man, I need to say thank you to you.
Man, I appreciate you saying that.
Huge impact, man.
That's you know, you don't hear that often from clients, and you hope that's the impact you get to have. And like, I saw real estate. It's not like, you know, the most noble job in the world, but to be, like I talked about earlier, like I want to be for my clients. I want to be friends with them, and I want to be able to help them. And to hear those kind of things are like, yeah, that's exactly why I want to help buyers, especially, is because I get to make an impact like that versus just selling a house and they move town and, you know, whatever else. And so that's, that's good to hear.
Maybe I could you bring, tell Martha, hey, I got this guy, do a nice testimonial, but I have to wear like long sleeves and everything.
No. I am here for all tattooed clients. Man, I love tattoos. I think I don't have any tattoos because I probably like couldn't decide on what to get. I'm like so indecisive in that way, but
just go crazy and get everything.
Yeah, that's it. I guess you start somewhere.
I'll be honest, man. Shane Vitko was on yesterday, man. Deviant Gentleman. Big shout out to them. Like I said, he's a great guy, man. I was so jealous of this man. He was, I'll never do it, but dude, like his knuckles, every section of his knuckles were tattooed. The tops of his hands were tattooed. Like he had like up his neck, and I'm like, oh man,
you're so jealous.
I'm like holding it back, and I'm like, and at the same time, I'm like, man, there's really got to be something wrong with me to think that just envy somebody like that. But I guess it's like a sense of freedom. I don't know.
Well, I've got a question for you. What was the most painful tattoo you've had?
Oh my goodness. I'll take a picture of it and I'll put it up in here on the show. I have these little tattoos on. I want to throw my foot up here. Hold on. Here
it is. Let's see him. Oh yes.
Okay. This little guy right here.
Yeah.
So I have one here, and then I think I got one on the outside of my ankle.
Okay. You think you have one on the outside?
I think it's that foot. Hey, when you start getting so many tattoos, you kind of lose track of where they all are, and you don't even count. Like somebody asked me the other day, how many tattoos do you have? And I said, well, you stop counting, like tattoos when they start blending together, and you just start counting hours.
Right.
Like I've got like 150 hours.
That's wild.
But those, so I've got on my left foot on the outsides of the ankles, I've got that little one on the outside and inside, and then I have one on the inside of my right ankle.
Yeah.
And what those are, they symbolize different things, but I got them on Friday the 13th.
Okay.
So most tattoo places.
Don't they do like a 13 and all that stuff?
Yeah, they do. And on the Friday the 13th, they do usually have large parties.
Right.
So the place I used to go to in the Woodlands called Super Changos is they would do it was a $13 tattoo with a $7 tip.
That's nice.
Way before inflation.
I was gonna say that's really nice.
Now I want to say
it's $113.
Yeah, it's like 113. Yeah, they're quite expensive, but they throw away all the stuff it's brand new every single time. So anyway, but they're generally smaller tattoos with some reference to 13 of them.
Sure.
Well, these are on the insides, and I don't know, test this out.
Mm-hmm.
Even with wearing your socks and your shoes, very little
Yeah.
ever touches that space,
Right.
around your Achilles tendon, behind your ankle bone.
That sounds painful.
Very, very sensitive,
Right.
and there's so many nerves in there. The tattoo artist literally had to lay across my foot because the nerves are just doing this, pulling up,
twitch and everything.
and I cried.
Oh, I bet.
All three of them, and I'm covered in them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're on my chest, they're on my back, they're on my shoulders, and everything.
And I've always heard the most bony parts of your body are what hurts the worst because it's just like a needle hitting bone versus like muscle and whatever else in between.
It can get really, really bad.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, man, doing all the tattoos, doing everything. Like when I did this, I got really, really smart. Not gonna lie. Did this section of my arm, and I got that numbing cream. From a doctor.
Yeah.
And I covered it like an hour before. Right. Covered my whole arm, wrapped it in like Saran wrap.
Yeah.
And then I went in.
Couldn't feel it.
Couldn't feel a thing.
That's
for
awesome.
Hours upon hours.
That's smart.
But the ankles, man. I cried. I literally, I mean, I'm shedding tears. I've got them on the insides of my arms. I had them on my fingers. No.
Ankle. Note to self.
I cried. Don't do that one.
Don't do ankle. My first tattoo will not be an ankle.
Yeah, like a lot of hey, women are a different breed. Like they can handle pain way better, and you see women with like little ankle tattoos and stuff like that. I'm like, no, not for me.
No, that's it.
And I've got the tops of my feet tattooed.
Oh, really?
You put them together. The tops of my feet tattooed. They look like a Mickey Mouse skull. I did it to piss off my son. But they put my feet together, and that didn't hurt.
Yeah,
didn't hurt one bit, man.
Interesting.
But so
ankles.
Stay away from the ankles. Get them everywhere else.
Yep.
Yeah, man. But
You say you got a tattoo that made you smarter? Because that is not true.
no, definitely did not. No.
He said I got smart.
Yeah.
Before I got the tattoo. That's it. Yeah. He got smart.
I did not get smarter.
He got smart with the lower half of his left arm.
Yeah.
Put the numbing cream on.
But man, Mark, thank you so much, man. Thank you for coming out, man.
Yeah.
Dude, Mark Fontenot, man, you were a blessing to me. I appreciate it. You helped me through, and you just don't know, man, what you did for me, man. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, man.
It was a fun process.
Yeah,
Glad
man.
to be here.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks.
All right, Mark. Mark Fontenot, everybody.